An estimated 28 million people worldwide are trapped in forced labor. That's about 3.5 out of every 1,000 individuals. When forced labor is at its worst, it involves total control over someone for profit. That's when we call it modern slavery, which is different from chattel slavery in history involving legal ownership of people. Modern slavery turns that upside down. No one legally owns anyone today. Exploitation now tends to be shorter term. In the past, those enslaved were expensive, bound to their enslavers for years, and the entire endeavor was justified by racial beliefs. In modern slavery, in contrast, people are treated as cheap, disposable resources, and racial excuses are less relevant. In many regions, people are born into forced labor, as they are born into caste or hereditary roles they cannot escape. Poverty, social norms, and coercion lock people in. Besides, these are developing regions that often run on community ties, not paperwork. What shapes economic life in these societies is kinship, customs, and informal networks, not contracts or regulations. Take Mauritania, for instance. Descendants of enslaved black Africans often work unpaid for lighter-skinned Arab Moors, doing housework or herding livestock. Family and ethnic traditions split society along African and Arab lines, keeping black Africans down. Similar arrangements persist in Mali, Niger, Sudan, and many other places, though there are differences. For example, Nepal's Kamaya, a landless community of bonded laborers, remain in servitude. Yemen's Mohammedan are stuck with sanitation, waste disposal, and other undesirable work. Social norms help sustain these patterns and usually outlast reforms. Another issue is debt bondage, which typically starts with promises of opportunity but quickly twists into exploitation through rigged contracts, withheld pay, or inflated fees. In Thailand, migrant fishermen from Myanmar and Cambodia are lured with job offers, only to end up trapped at sea, cut off from the rest of the world with little opportunity to escape. Malaysia's Bangladeshi construction workers often live in overcrowded camps with passports seized until vague recruitment debts are cleared. In Cambodia and Laos, criminal networks lure young people with tech jobs, then lock them in compounds and force them to run online scams. In more rural economies, debt bondage involves long-term dependence. Families borrow money to meet basic needs and then are drawn into exploitative labor arrangements with no end in sight. In India and Pakistan, brick kiln workers see debts stretch across generations. Legal protections exist but rarely reach these informal sectors. In Brazil's remote regions, ranching or charcoal laborers start in debt for transport fees and then are forced to buy food, tools, and shelter at inflated prices, trapping them in servitude. Economic weakness opens the door to debt bondage everywhere. Escaping is tough. Physical, legal, and mental barriers lock people in. Consumers often unknowingly fund these global supply chains with their everyday purchases. Sexual exploitation is another dark corner of modern slavery, built on deception and control, locally or across borders. Traffickers often lure adult and underage females, and sometimes boys and men, with a fake offer for a job, school, or travel, and then force them into sex work. Nigeria's traffickers use juju rituals and associated spiritual threats to make victims swear to silence before shipping them to Europe. Ukrainian women are similarly deceived with housekeeping or waitressing gigs abroad, only to face forced sex work. In Mexico, drug cartels operate brothels where girls are held captive, isolated from outside contact. Variations of this pattern appear in numerous countries, but with digital technologies, the scope of sexual exploitation is now global. In Cambodia, desperate families hand kids to agents for online exploitation. Similarly, in the Philippines, cybersex rings make underage girls perform on camera for global clients. and they operate out of ordinary homes. Similar systems exist even in the developed world. In the UK and US, traffickers groom homeless or runaway teens from vulnerable backgrounds, manipulate them psychologically, creating emotional dependency, sometimes with cycles of violence disguised as affection. All of these systems, regardless of their location, function through a combination of deception, fear, isolation, and restricted movement. They wield tools ranging from religious rituals to digital traps. These illegal activities persist with the help of corrupt officials everywhere, in both the developing and developed worlds. They take bribes and look the other way. In some cases, they even facilitate operations such as cross-border trafficking. In many parts of the world, governments also fuel forced labor. They weave coercion into laws and institutions. It's legal on paper, tied to prisons, military, or civic duties, making forced labor a feature of state policy. The Soviet Union's gulags stand out as a notorious example, yet such practices are neither rare nor confined to history. In the US, the 13th Amendment bans slavery but permits forced labor as punishment for a crime. As a result, prisoners across the country work for pennies, and in some southern states, refusal can mean solitary confinement or lost privileges. In North Korea, political prisoners are sent to labor camps. In Eritrea, national service is compulsory. The drafted youths are placed in military, construction, or infrastructure roles with little pay, and there's no clear timeline for release. The system functions as a means of mass labor mobilization under state control. In Vietnam, drug rehab centers operate as labor sites, where addicts are made to manufacture goods or stitch garments. In Turkmenistan, it's mandatory for public sector employees, including teachers and doctors, to join the annual cotton harvest. In Egypt, political prisoners are sometimes forced into labor for military-owned enterprises with no compensation. The pattern emerging from these cases is that states use authority to extract labor without consent or even a meaningful exit.
How many people are here working inside right now?
Tenemos alrededor de 2.200 personas trabajando.
And what are they working on?
Ellos están trabajando lo que son los uniformes, confeccionando los uniformes propios como privados de libertad. También todas las prendas que se hacen a solicitud de instituciones.
Trabajamos totalmente para prendas para el gobierno. Hemos producido también uniformes de la Fuerza Armada, de los agentes penitenciarios, o sea, toda la rama, lo que tenga que ver. Estamos pronto a iniciar el proyecto de los uniformes escolares para todos los niños del país, de todas las escuelas públicas del país.
Another major issue is child labor, which thrives in contexts of poverty through families with few options. In India and Bangladesh, kids as young as 8 sew clothes, roll cigarettes, or work as street vendors. They don't all go to school, and those who do have limited time to devote to their studies, as they have to support their families with their small incomes. In Indonesia, families experiencing economic hardship sent their young daughters to rich homes as informal domestics, typically isolated and underpaid. Similarly, in Haiti, halfway around the world from Indonesia, rural families view the restoback system as an opportunity to move their kids to city homes, but it often turns out to be unpaid servitude, if not mistreatment. Ivory Coast, behind 40% of global cocoa, has countless farms, some of which use trafficked kids from nearby countries. There's currently no accreditation service in the world to ensure any chocolate bar in supermarkets is free from trafficked child labor. Global demand for chocolate, clothing, and other products quietly powers all this exploitation, which often goes unnoticed by shoppers. Culture and local customs sometimes also help maintain child labor, even when local laws ban it. For example, in Afghanistan, preteen boys are costumed as dancers for men. In Ghana, Togo, and Benin, virgin girls, some as young as 10, are assigned to ritual servitude in religious shrines to atone for the wrongdoing of a family member. These girls are stripped of their freedoms and serve priests for years in unpaid domestic tasks while having minimal access to education. Across these cases, the poorest carry the heaviest burdens, with few ways out. In the developing world, coercion is often overt and direct, while developed countries conceal more subtle forms of exploitation within legal loopholes. Under these circumstances, one is compelled to ask why developed countries with complex bureaucracies fail to deliver real freedom, instead disguising subtler forms of coercion. It's a question that lingers, pushing us to look harder at the systems we live in, which are supposedly strong democracies.